I shouldn't exist anymore. According to every database that matters, I died in a training accident at Johnson Space Center 3 weeks ago. There was a closed casket ceremony, a folded flag, and a carefully worded statement about systems failure during a high-risk simulation. My parents got a condolence call from a man who introduced himself only as Director Hayes. He told them I didn't suffer. He was lying. I know he was lying because I was sitting across the table from him when he made that call. They made me watch. That was the final step in erasing me from the world I thought I understood. It wasn't the first step, though. That started 6 months earlier, with a short, sterile email from a NASA address I'd never seen before. Subject: Reassignment, Special Access Program. No greeting, no sign-off. Just a time, a room number at Johnson, and a note that I was required to bring a physical copy of my security badge and sign an updated non-disclosure agreement. I almost ignored it. I'm a neuroscientist, not a pilot. My job used to be simple. I analyzed brain activity in astronauts and long-duration mission candidates. I studied how isolation, microgravity, and stress rewired their neural pathways. It was academic, clinical, safe. The closest I got to danger was a simulator that occasionally made people throw up, but that email had a clearance string in the header I didn't recognize. A stack of letters and numbers that meant someone, somewhere, had pulled me up several rungs higher than my official access. So I went. The conference room they sent me to wasn't one I'd seen before. No mission patches on the walls, no posters of Mars or Artemis landing sites. Just a table, 4 chairs, and a black phone in the center. The man waiting for me looked like he'd been carved out of insomnia and coffee. Late 50s, grey at the temples, suit that cost more than my car. No visible ID badge, which told me more than any plastic card could have. "Dr. Rowan Hale," he said, standing. His voice had that practiced, measured calm that bureaucrats use when they talk about casualties. "Thank you for coming in." "You didn't give me a choice," I said. My tone came out sharper than I intended. "Who are you?" He smiled without amusement and slid a folder across the table. The cover was stamped with a symbol I recognized, NASA's meatball logo. Beneath it, in bold black letters, were 3 words: Interagency Joint Task. Below that, smaller, Access Level Omega-17. "Call me Hayes," he said, "and consider this a promotion." I opened the folder. The first page was a non-disclosure agreement so comprehensive it might as well have been a confession of treason. Words like lifetime, retroactive, and extrajudicial measures jumped out at me. "You understand," Hayes said, watching my eyes move, "that once you sign this, there is no going back to your previous life, not fully." I looked up. "What kind of work are we talking about?" He tapped the second page. It showed my own personnel file, degrees, publications, prior clearances. Under new assignment, the text had been blacked out. Not redacted, completely overprinted with a solid block of ink. "We have a subject," Hayes said. "We need a specialist in human cognition and neural drift to study it." "It?" I repeated. "Not him or her?" His gaze didn't waver. "We'll discuss pronouns after you sign." I should have walked out. I should have pushed the folder back across the table, told him to find someone else, and gone back to my quiet lab with its clean data and predictable grunt cycles. Instead, I picked up the pen. Curiosity is the most dangerous addiction in science. They count on that. When the ink dried, Hayes nodded, satisfied, and reached into his jacket. He slid a second folder toward me, thicker than the first. The cover bore no logo, just 2 lines of stark type. Site: Groom Lake Test Range. Sublevel: 17. My throat went dry. "Area 51, I said. He didn't confirm it, didn't deny it, just watched me like an experiment in progress. "You'll depart tonight," he said. "Civilian clothes, no electronic devices. You will be issued all necessary equipment on site." "Tonight?" I glanced at the clock on the wall. It was barely past noon. He picked up the black phone, pressed a single button, and spoke quietly into the receiver. "We're green. Package is signed." Package. It took them 10 minutes to erase my badge from the Johnson network. By the time I walked out of that room, my digital trail inside NASA's system had already begun to blur. The flight wasn't commercial. It wasn't even on a standard manifest. They put me on a small transport plane with unmarked fuselage and windows that stayed shuttered the entire trip. The only indication we were moving at all was the subtle pressure in my ears and the low vibration threading through the cabin floor. There were 3 other passengers. 2 wore Air Force uniforms without name tapes. The third wore plain black, eyes hidden behind dark lenses despite the dim cabin lights. None of them spoke. I tried. Habit more than anything. "First time to the middle of nowhere?" I asked the airman across from me. He stared past me like I wasn't there. I stopped trying. We landed sometime after sunset. I knew only because the ramp that lowered from the back of the plane opened onto cool air that smelled of dust and jet fuel, and when they finally let me lift the shade on one window for a second, I saw distant mountains etched in twilight. They marched me across the tarmac toward a building that looked like every secure facility I'd ever seen. Concrete, minimal windows, just enough architecture to suggest it had been designed by a committee that hated beauty. Inside, the world narrowed. Security checkpoints became a rhythm. Metal, detectors, scanners, biometric readers. At each one, another stripe of color was added to the temporary badge they'd clipped to my chest until it looked like a barcode wrapped around my name. Hale, Rowan T. Access, Omega 17. Hayes met me just past the last checkpoint, as if he'd simply stepped through a different door in reality. "Sleep well on the flight?" he asked. "Not really." "That's unfortunate. You won't be sleeping much down here." "Down where?" He gestured toward a bank of elevators. Their doors were thicker than the vaults at Johnson, where we stored moon rocks and classified hardware. Each elevator had no floor buttons, just a small slot for a keycard and a recessed numeric keypad. Hayes inserted his card, pressed one digit, and the doors slid open with unnerving silence. The panel inside displayed only numbers descending, 1 through 20. "We're going to 17, I said. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. The descent took longer than I expected. My ears popped. The overhead lights flickered very slightly, not in a natural way, but as if they were adjusting to something deeper than a simple change in pressure. "Before we arrive," Hayes said, his tone shifting into something more formal, "you need to understand a few things." "That would be helpful," I said. He ignored the sarcasm. "Level 17 is a joint containment and observation facility," he continued. "Our subject is unique. It has been in custody for 39 years. During that time, we have confirmed several facts." He ticked them off with cold precision. "It does not age. It does not sleep. It does not require food or water in any conventional sense. It demonstrates awareness of personnel who interact with it, even when not in direct line of sight. And it has, on multiple occasions, accurately predicted external events it had no conventional way of knowing about." "External events," I said. "You mean outside this facility?" "Outside this planet," he said. The elevator shuddered gently and slowed. "You will refer to it," Hayes continued, "as Commander Alan Drescher, or simply the subject. You will treat it as if it were an astronaut in post-mission evaluation. Your task is to map its cognitive patterns, identify any changes over time, and determine whether its current state poses an escalating threat." The doors began to open. "One more thing, Dr. Hale," he said. I turned to him. His eyes, for the first time since I'd met him, betrayed something I hadn't seen before. Fear. "Do not," he said quietly, Let it finish any sentence that begins with the words, "when I was out there." The hallway beyond the elevator stretched ahead in clean, surgical sterility. Thick glass panels lined one side, their contents obscured by polarized tint. At the far end, a set of double doors waited, guarded by 2 armed personnel whose weapons were not standard issue. A faint, rhythmic pulse pressed at my skull as we walked, like the echo of a heartbeat through metal. It took me a moment to realize it wasn't mine. Hayes stopped at the last set of glass panels and keyed in another code. The polarization faded. Behind the observation window, sitting calmly on a steel chair in the center of a stark, white cell, was a man in an old-style orange flight suit. His hair was neatly trimmed. His posture was relaxed. His hands rested lightly on his knees. His face matched the photograph in the dossier clipped to my folder. Commander Alan Drescher, declared lost at sea, 1986. He lifted his head, turned, and looked straight at me through the glass, and he smiled like he'd been waiting. "Hello, Dr. Hale," he mouthed. He should not have known my name. For a moment, I forgot how to breathe. Commander Alan Drescher, dead for nearly 4 decades, was looking at me like I was an old friend arriving late to a reunion. His expression wasn't surprised. It wasn't confused. It was welcoming, as if he'd known I was coming, as if he'd seen me long before this moment. "Don't react to the recognition," Hayes murmured beside me. "It does that. It likes to unsettle new personnel." But there was a tremor in his voice. Even he didn't believe the explanation he was feeding me. "Was my name in the system?" I asked quietly. "No," Hayes said. "Your assignment was classified. Only 4 people knew you were coming." "Then how?" He held up a hand. "Dr. Hale, one lesson you must internalize quickly down here. Do not assume conventional mechanisms. The subject's awareness is atypical. Atypical. A bureaucratic word for impossible." I forced myself to keep my gaze neutral as Drescher lowered his eyes again, as though satisfied he'd made his point. "Let's continue," Hayes said. We moved past the observation window to the double doors at the end of the hall. Another series of locks disengaged, heavy ones, the kind built not to keep a prisoner contained, but to ensure that if something went wrong inside, nothing could escape by accident. Inside was the interview chamber. The walls were soft white, padded not like an asylum, but like an anechoic chamber designed to minimize noise and reflection. A single table sat in the center, bolted into the floor. 2 chairs, and a pane of reinforced glass on the far wall allowed observation from the corridor. Hayes nodded to the guard. The guard typed in a sequence, and the far door, the one that led into the containment cell, clicked open. "Shouldn't he be restrained?" I asked. Hayes didn't look at me. "Physical restraints are neither necessary nor effective." "Why not?" He didn't answer. Instead, he gestured toward the chair closest to the floor drain. Floor drain. My pulse quickened. "Sit," Hayes said. "I'll introduce you." I did. The chair was cold enough to sting through my clothes. A soft hum filled the room as a secondary seal disengaged. Then another. Then another. The heavy door opened in measured increments, each mechanical step a reminder that whatever lived behind it required precautions beyond anything I had seen in a decade of classified work. Commander Alan Drescher stepped through the doorway with slow, deliberate movements. He looked perfectly human. Late 40s, strong posture, skin pale, but not sickly. His flight suit was crisp, impossibly clean given its alleged age. No fraying, no fading. It was as if he'd put it on minutes ago. He closed the door behind him gently, respectfully, like a guest returning to a familiar room. "Commander," Hayes said. Drescher's attention snapped to him, not abruptly, fluidly, like water adjusting to gravity. "Director Hayes," he said. His voice was calm, warm, and controlled. "You're early today. A cold ripple slid down my spine. Hayes hadn't told me what time we were supposed to arrive. Drescher had no clocks, no windows, no sound cues, yet he knew. "That's classified," Hayes replied. Drescher smiled. "Time is never classified, only misunderstood." His eyes slid to me. "Dr. Hale," he said, pronouncing my name with soft precision. "I'm glad they sent a neuroscientist. The last one lacked nuance." I swallowed. "You've known other neuroscientists." "I've known many things, Rowan. May I call you Rowan?" "No," Hayes snapped. Drescher chuckled softly. "Still protecting your people from intimacy, Director?" He glided, there's no other word for it, toward the chair opposite me and sat down. His posture was relaxed, but it carried the subtle tension of a predator pretending to be a house cat. "Let's begin," Hayes said, taking position near the glass. Drescher raised one finger. "Before we start, Dr. Hale, may I share something with you?" Hayes's tone became razor sharp. "Commander Drescher, you will wait for the assessment protocol." Drescher didn't look at him. He only watched me. His eyes were a shade of blue that reminded me of high-altitude sky, beautiful and utterly lifeless. "I would like," he said softly, "to tell you about something I saw during my mission." My heart thudded once, hard. Hayes stiffened. "Commander, you will not begin a sentence with..." Drescher kept speaking. "When I was out there..." "Stop!" Hayes barked. My breath caught. I could feel the temperature in the room shift by a degree, a microscopic but undeniable change, as if the air itself hesitated. Drescher smiled without showing teeth. "Always so dramatic, Director. I wasn't going to finish the sentence." "Yes, you were," Hayes said. The commander tilted his head. "And what would have happened if I had, Hayes didn't reply, and that silence, that was worse than any answer. Drescher folded his hands on the table. "Apologies, Dr. Hale. I forget how fragile the early stages are." "Early stages of what?" I asked before I could stop myself. He leaned in slightly, and for the first time I saw it. Something behind the human facade, a shifting depth in his pupils, like looking into water that was deeper than light should allow. "Adjustment," he said. "Integration, familiarity. You'll understand soon." Hayes cut in. "Dr. Hale will conduct baseline cognitive tests today, nothing more." "Of course," Drescher said smoothly. "We should respect protocol. That's what keeps the universe from collapsing into chaos, isn't it?" "That's one interpretation," Hayes muttered. Drescher turned his palms upward, a gesture that reminded me of an astronaut approaching a new instrument panel, as if he expected me to hand him something invisible. "Ask your first question," he said. I tried to steady myself, but something was wrong with the room, subtle but unmistakable. The hum was louder, the shadows sharper. The corners of the walls looked slightly wrong, like the geometry had shifted by a fraction of a degree. I opened the assessment packet with hands that felt clumsy. "State your name," I said. Drescher smiled. "Rowan," he said gently. "I think we both know that isn't the question you're supposed to be asking." My throat tightened. "Commander, please answer." He didn't respond immediately. He only watched me with a patience that felt ancient. Finally, he spoke. "My name," he said, "is Alan Drescher." Then he added, almost whispering, "But that is not the name they gave me when I came back." The words hung in the air like a pressure change before a storm. Not the name they gave me when I came back. A dozen questions clawed for release, but Hayes gave me a look that said very clearly, "Do not engage." So I didn't. For now. "Commander," Hayes said tightly, "you will answer only what you are asked." Drescher's eyes flicked toward him with polite amusement. "Then ask something meaningful." I forced myself to take a slow breath and refocus on the packet in front of me. Baseline tests. Simple, grounding. designed to establish cognitive drift in astronauts after long-duration isolation. Key word, astronauts, not whatever Drescher was now. Let's begin with temporal orientation, I said. What is today's date? Drescher's expression softened into something almost pitying. Rowan, he said gently, you and I both know dates are irrelevant down here. But if you insist, I'll play along. He closed his eyes, not in a normal, reflexive way, more like a machine entering a processing cycle. Today is Wednesday, he said finally, April 12th, and if the clock above the observation window is calibrated correctly, which it usually isn't, it's 1942. I felt a chill scrape down my back. How do you know that without looking? I can hear it, he said simply. Hear what? The electrons, he said, moving. My spine stiffened. He opened his eyes again, smiling as if he delivered a harmless joke. Next question? I tried to stay clinical. Fine, can you state your mission designation? He didn't pause. STS-28, he said. Shuttle Columbia, August 1986. Classified Department of Defense payload. Assigned crew of 5. Only 1 returned. My pen froze over the paper. The official record says STS-28 launched in 1989. Yes, Drescher said. That's the problem with official records. Hayes cleared his throat sharply. Commander, you are straying outside the permitted boundaries. But boundaries are imaginary, Drescher said, especially the ones drawn to hide inconvenient truths. His polite smile never slipped, not even for a moment. It was the kind of smile someone practiced until it became a mask. I continued. Describe the last event you recall before NASA lost contact with you. This time, Drescher paused. Everything about him went still. Not stiff, still, like a creature slowing its movements to avoid startling prey. I remember, he said slowly, passing through the thermosphere. The shuttle vibrated. The O-ring seals stretched. The stars were... He stopped. Not because he chose to, because something stopped him. The temperature dropped another degree. The soft hum in the room faded. Even the lights dimmed slightly, as if absorbing his hesitation. Hayes stepped forward. Commander, hold your response. You know that line of recollection is prohibited. Drescher tilted his head. Right. Apologies. I lost track for a moment. Lost track. As if memories that had haunted NASA for decades were simply a matter of misplacing a thought. I forced myself to continue. Let's focus on cognitive testing, I said. Please repeat this sequence of numbers. 1, 9, 3, 2, 0, 4. Drescher blinked once. That's not the sequence you want to ask me, he said softly. My throat tightened. It's the one in the protocol. He shook his head almost lovingly. No, Rowan. Ask the sequence on page 15. I froze. Page 15 was sealed. A fold-over flap with a red stripe. Visible only to the assessor, not the subject. Something he should not, could not have seen. My fingers twitched involuntarily toward the page. Hayes reacted instantly. Stop. His voice cracked like a whip. Do not turn that page. I jerked my hand back like the packet had burned me. Drescher watched the entire exchange with serene interest. You see? He murmured. We all have our secrets. I swallowed hard. How did you know page 15 existed? Because I've seen it, Drescher said. Many times. That's impossible. This test is new. I received it this morning. For you, perhaps. My pulse hammered. Hayes stepped between us slightly, as if he could block whatever was happening with his body alone. Moving on, I forced myself through several more questions. Motor recall, short-term memory, sensory response. Drescher answered all of them with flawless precision. Not just accuracy, anticipation. He responded half a second before I finished asking each prompt. He wasn't completing the tests, he was predicting them. When we reached the final assessment marker, I exhaled shakily. That concludes the baseline. Good, Drescher said cheerfully, as if we'd just finished a pleasant conversation. Now it's my turn. My head snapped up. Your turn for what? To ask you something. Hayes reacted instantly. Dr. Hale will not answer questions from the subject. That is explicit protocol. Of course, Drescher said, folding his hands. But if he refuses, he won't understand what's about to happen. Nothing is about to happen, Hayes snapped. Drescher smiled wider. Oh, Director, you really should stop saying that. He turned his gaze back to me. Rowan, he said, when you walked in, the first thing you felt was the hum in the walls. You tried to ignore it. You assumed it was mechanical, a ventilation cycle, fluorescence, something mundane. My blood went cold. He was right. I hadn't said it out loud. I hadn't even written it down. How did you feel it stronger than the others, Drescher said. Like I did. Before. Before what? I whispered. He leaned forward. The lights dimmed again, not flickering, adjusting. Before I stopped being alone in my own head, something unseen pressed against the walls then. Just a shift, subtle but undeniable, like the air was flexing. Hayes slammed his palm on the emergency stop panel. Session terminated. Guards. Drescher didn't move, didn't flinch. He just kept watching me. Tell me, Dr. Hale, he said softly. His voice was no longer comforting. It was vast. When was the last time you truly heard your thoughts and knew they were only yours? The floor vibrated beneath my feet, only once, and only for a moment. But it was enough. Hayes cursed under his breath. Get him out of here! Now! The guards rushed forward. Drescher stayed perfectly calm, almost pleased. As the door slid shut between us, he whispered, It's starting. They dragged me out of the interview chamber so fast my chair toppled behind me. The corridor outside felt colder than before. Same sterile lighting, same precision engineering, but something in the air had shifted. It tasted faintly metallic, like the air after a lightning strike. Hayes didn't slow down. His grip on my arm wasn't painful, but it was firm enough to broadcast a message. Don't stop, don't look back, don't ask. Behind us, the reinforced door sealed with a deep hydraulic thud. A sound designed to reassure anyone topside that nothing from level 17 could ever escape. But reassurance wasn't on the table anymore. What the hell was that? I choked out as Hayes pulled me into a decontamination bay. He slapped the panel to start a rapid cycle sterilization. Cold vapor hissed around us. You broke protocol. He asked me a question, and you engaged. I didn't answer. You almost did, Hayes snapped. And almost is enough. The subject tests boundaries. Psychological pressure, emotive prediction, acoustic modulation. He pushes until someone cracks. I stared at him. Acoustic modulation? You think he's influencing us with sound? Not sound, Hayes said. Pattern. Before I could ask what that meant, 2 technicians in grey scrubs hurried in. They began scanning me with handheld devices, thermal, spectral, neurological. One held a small instrument over my chest that thrummed faintly. What are you checking for? I asked. Resonance, the technician said. My heart rate? No, he murmured. Overlap. My stomach dropped. Overlap with what? He didn't answer, or couldn't. Hayes stepped forward, smoothing his suit like he was trying to reassemble himself. Dr. Hale, listen carefully. You are not to speak to the subject again until we evaluate your exposure. Exposure to what exactly? He hesitated. Not long, but long enough for dread to crystallize in my spine. Then he said quietly, influence. That's not scientific, I shot back. Influence means nothing without mechanism, vector, stimulus. You can't just... Rowan, Hayes said. lowering his voice. You felt what happened in that room. You felt the temperature drop. You felt the pressure shift. You felt something in your head that wasn't yours. I stiffened. Because he was right. But I hadn't told him that. How did you know? We've seen it before, Hayes said. Early stage personnel show increased susceptibility. You're predisposed. I bristled. Predisposed? Based on what? We screened your neural scans, he said. You have above average temporal lobe sensitivity, high dimensional pattern recognition. It makes you an asset. And a risk, the technician added quietly. Hayes shot him a warning glare but didn't correct the statement. I steadied my voice. So, let me get this straight. You brought me here because I'm receptive to something you can't explain. And you're surprised that something happened. Hayes exhaled sharply. It is not surprise, he said. It is confirmation. Confirmation of what? That Commander Drescher, Hayes said, is no longer operating within human neural parameters. Silence pressed in around us, heavy, suffocating. What do you mean by that? I finally whispered. He came back different, Hayes said. His EEG signatures don't match any known biological profile. His circadian cycle is non-existent. His neural activity is continuous and layered. Layered. Multiple parallel processes, Hayes said, as if more than one cognition is running inside his skull. I felt the cold sink deeper. Are you saying he's possessed? Nothing supernatural, Hayes snapped. Do not default to mythology. This is not a ghost or a demon. It is a phenomenon, one that defies conventional neuroscience. And you don't know what caused it, I said. No, Hayes admitted. We don't. The sterilization finished with a soft chime. The technicians stepped back. You're clear, one said. For now, added the other. Hayes ignored them. He motioned for me to follow him down another hallway. This one narrower, darker, the lights recessed deep into the ceiling, as if they were trying not to disturb something. Where are we going? I asked. To see the telemetry chamber, Hayes said. If you're going to work with the subject, you need context. The corridor bent at subtle, disorienting angles. Not enough to be obvious. Just enough to make the brain question its own sense of geometry. Hayes noticed my hesitation. Foundation shift, he muttered. We had to reinforce this level after the first incident. First incident. You'll get the full briefing later. For now, stay close. We reached a secure door labeled Archive, A17 Prime, Authorized Personnel. Only Hayes pressed his palm to the scanner. The door opened into a dark room filled with consoles, monitors, and a large central display showing strange, repeating waveforms, sharp peaks, smooth troughs, rhythms that looked almost like heartbeats, just wrong. This, Hayes said, is Commander Drescher's neural activity, baseline from the day he was recovered. The screen flickered, the waveforms shifted. This, Hayes continued, is Drescher 6 weeks later. 2 layers now, 2 distinct but synchronized frequencies. I felt a shiver. And now, Hayes tapped the console. The display erupted into a dense, shimmering forest of overlapping waves, 3, 4, 5 layers, maybe more, too many to count. Each oscillation perfectly synchronized with the others, a harmony, a choir. My scalp prickled. What is this? We don't know, Hayes said. We tried to analyze the signals. We ran them through acoustic models, electromagnetic simulations, cognitive mapping. Nothing matched. He pointed to one waveform, thin, sharp, almost a straight line. This one, he said, never existed in the original baseline. It appeared the day after his first recorded phrase beginning with, "When I was out there." My blood ran cold. And this one, Hayes said, gesturing to a deeper, smoother line, appeared after a level 17 breach event. We still don't know what caused it. What happened during that breach? I asked. He didn't answer. He just stared at the screen. The waveforms pulsed. Once. Twice. Then. The entire display spiked, all channels slamming upward at the same instant. Like a sudden jolt of recognition. An alert blared. Hayes lunged forward. Damn it! He's interacting with the telemetry again. The lines on the screen shifted, bending, reshaping themselves until they formed a new waveform. A clean, single pattern, a signal, a message. 3 pulses, pause, 3 pulses, pause, 3 pulses. A chill gripped my spine. That's, I whispered. Hayes finished for me. Morse code, he said grimly. Distress signal, I breathed. SOS. Hayes stared at the console. No, he said quietly. It's not addressed to us. The lights overhead flickered, and from somewhere deep in the facility, beneath our feet, the hum began again. Low, resonant, growing. He's calling out, Hayes said. To what? I whispered. Hayes turned toward me, and his expression told me the truth was worse than anything I could imagine. Not to what, he said. To who? The hum rising beneath level 17 didn't feel like sound. It felt like pressure, like the weight of deep water settling over my chest. The lights dimmed again, subtle, but enough to make shadows lengthen in unnatural ways. Hayes slapped a kill switch on the telemetry console, but the waveforms kept pulsing. They weren't coming from the machines. They were coming from him. Is this normal? I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. No, Hayes said. When the subject broadcasts independently, it usually happens after prolonged sessions, not minutes after meeting someone new. He glanced at me sharply, as if the sudden anomaly was somehow my fault. Follow me, Hayes barked, already moving toward the exit. I hesitated. Where are we going? To the uplink vault. We need to confirm he hasn't interfaced with the array. The what? But Hayes didn't answer. He shoved open the door and stalked into the corridor, and I hurried after him. The hallway seemed tighter than before, like the facility was subtly contracting around us. The hum vibrated through the metal flooring in slow, pulsing waves that matched the spiking patterns I'd seen on the telemetry screen. 3 pulses. Pause. 3 pulses. Pause. SOS. But it didn't feel like a plea for rescue. It felt like a beacon. We rounded a corner sharply. 2 armed guards stood outside a massively reinforced door stamped with another red warning. Uplink vault, absolute isolation. The guards stiffened when they saw Hayes. Sir, one said, we detected a partial handshake attempt on the shielded fiber. Only for a second. Hayes swore under his breath. Drescher shouldn't be able to access anything beyond his room. Nothing inside this facility communicates externally. The guard swallowed. Then, whatever that was didn't originate from the uplink. Hayes's face darkened. Open it. The vault door slid aside in thick, grinding layers. Inside was a cavernous room filled with racks of offline servers, cold, inert, powered down except for minimal emergency monitoring. A circular platform sat in the center, surrounded by insulated cabling. Hayes circled the platform, scanning the equipment. Check the manual locks, he ordered. Confirm nothing's been engaged. As the guards moved to comply, I drifted toward a console on the far wall. A tiny monitor displayed a faint, blinking notification. Signal received, timestamp, 1952-09. Origin unknown. I stared. It was the exact moment Drescher had looked at me in the interview chamber and said, "Tell me, Dr. Hale, when was the last time you truly heard your thoughts?" My skin went cold. "Hayes," I called out, "you need to see this." He strode over, annoyed. "What now?" Then he saw the timestamp. His irritation drained away. "That's impossible," he whispered. "This system isn't connected to anything. It shouldn't be able to register a signal." "It did," I said quietly, "and it came through exactly when he..." Hayes cut me off. It didn't come through anything. Something generated it inside the vault. A chill crept up my spine. You're saying Drescher sent a signal physically into this room, through meters of shielding, through concrete, steel, and vacuum-isolated fiber? Yes, Hayes said. That's exactly what I'm saying. The hum intensified. Everyone in the room froze. The metal flooring vibrated in a low rhythmic cadence, slow enough to be almost gentle, but powerful enough that we felt it in our bones. The guards reached for their weapons. Should we lock down level 17? One whispered. No, Hayes said darkly. That would tell him we're afraid. I wasn't sure that was something Drescher needed confirmation on. Hayes shot me a look. Dr. Hale, you need to understand something. Commander Drescher is not broadcasting for assistance. Then what is he doing? Establishing contact. With who? Hayes hesitated, and I realized, with growing horror, that he didn't have an answer, only a fear. We need to get back to control, he said. Now. We rushed back into the hallway. The hum followed, vibrating through the walls, crawling along the ceiling like an invisible presence. Halfway down the corridor, the lights flickered. Just once. A single stutter. But in that half-second of darkness, one of the guards shouted and stumbled back. "Did you see that?" he gasped. "See what?" I demanded. He pointed up. I looked. The ceiling was normal, smooth white panels, industrial fixtures, nothing out of place. But the guard's face was white as bone. There was something up there, a shape, human but wrong, like it was folded into the ceiling. Hayes went still. "Don't describe it," he said quietly. The guard swallowed. "Why not?" "Because if you give it definition," Hayes said, "it becomes easier for him to project." I stared at him. Project what? Image, concept, form. Hayes rubbed his temple. The subject's cognition doesn't simply operate, it intrudes. It maps itself onto the environment through the perception of those exposed to him. "You're saying the guard hallucinated?" "I'm saying," Hayes whispered, "that at level 17, hallucination is a two-way door." Another pulse rolled under our feet, this one stronger. We reached the control hub, a circular room lined with monitors, technicians, and surveillance feeds. The main display showed Drescher's cell. He was sitting on his chair, exactly as before, perfectly still. But something was different. On the screen, the shadows in the corners of his cell were deeper than they should have been. Not darker, deeper. Like they had weight. A technician turned toward Hayes, panic barely suppressed. "Sir, he's not doing anything, but the sensors are going off the charts. Ambient electromagnetic interference is rising, temperature dropping, and..." He hesitated. "Say it," Hayes ordered. "Sir, he's humming." I froze. "What do you mean humming?" I asked. The technician keyed up an audio feed. "We isolated the frequency. It's faint, but listen." The speakers crackled. A low melodic tone filled the room. Not a tune, not a song, a pattern. 3 pulses. Pause. 3 pulses. Pause. But beneath the SOS cadence, something else was woven into it, something that made my skin crawl. A second pattern hidden under the first. A reply. "Hayes," I whispered. Something's answering him. Hayes's face drained of color. "That's not possible," he muttered. But on the audio feed, the background pattern grew stronger, more defined, more intentional. Row by row, Drescher's neural waves began to reorganize into a new shape, one I'd never seen in any human recording. A perfect, spiraling formation, like a helix, but not DNA, something bigger, something older. Hayes steadied himself against a console. "God help us," he breathed. The reply wasn't coming from outside the facility. It was coming from inside it, somewhere below level 17. A place I didn't even know existed. If level 17 was a secret, then whatever lay beneath it was something far worse, something even Hayes hadn't planned on confronting today. Technicians darted between stations in the control hub, voices low but trembling. The main display showed Drescher still seated in his cell, humming softly, eyes half closed like someone lost in memory or meditation. But the audio pattern, the reply, kept building, filling, thickening. I felt it before I heard it, a pressure deep in my skull, behind my temples. Not painful, not even unpleasant, just intrusive, like someone lightly tapping on the inside of my mind from the wrong direction. "Hayes," I whispered, "what's under level 17? He didn't answer immediately. He stared at the spiraling waveform forming on the monitor, tightening loops, repeating arcs, each curve aligning perfectly with the next. It was mesmerizing, hypnotic. Then he spoke in a voice that barely existed. "Level 18, I blinked. "Level 18? There is no public record," Hayes interrupted. "No personnel assignments, no supply logs. It isn't acknowledged on paper, and it doesn't appear on blueprints, but it exists." A cold exhale escaped me. "Then what's kept down there?" He didn't look at me when he answered. "Nothing," he said. But the way he said it, strained, cracked, told me nothing wasn't an absence. It was a presence, a nameless one. Another technician's voice cracked through the rising tension. "Sir, temperature in cell 17 is dropping again. Whiteout forming on the camera lens." On the screen, fog crept along the edges of the cell's reinforced glass. Frost spiderwebbed outward in delicate fractal formations. But Drescher didn't shiver. He didn't react. He simply kept humming. Low, soft, precise. The spiraling waveform expanded across the display, each loop aligning into symmetry so mathematically pristine that no natural biological mind could have produced it. "Is that still him?" I asked. "No," Hayes said. "The outer pattern is the reply. We've never seen anything like it. Meaning whatever is sending it isn't human." Hayes exhaled like a man stepping off a cliff. "Meaning whatever's sending it hasn't been human for a very long time." The hum grew louder through the speakers. One of the guards gripped his rifle tighter. "Sir," he asked, "do we evacuate?" Hayes shook his head. "If we evacuate, we lose containment, and if we lose containment..." His jaw clenched. "We don't know what happens next." Another pulse rolled beneath the floor, then another, and the lights flickered, not randomly, but in sync with Drescher's hum. "This facility isn't just responding," I said, barely breathing. "It's resonating." Drescher's eyes snapped open on the screen. The hum stopped. Every conversation in the control hub died instantly. On the feed, Drescher slowly lifted his head and stared directly into the surveillance camera. "Hayes," he said. His voice carried through the speakers, calm and warm and horrifyingly composed. "You're out of time." Hayes froze. "Mute the feed," he whispered. A technician slammed the switch. Silence. Or no, not silence. The hum behind my temples was still vibrating, not externally, internally. It felt like someone whispering at the base of my skull, not in words, but in rhythmic pulses. I pressed a palm to my head. "Do you feel that?" "No," Hayes said. Then, after a heartbeat, "Which means it's directed at you." My stomach dropped. "Why me?" He didn't answer. Didn't have to. I'd felt it since the moment I stepped into Drescher's presence. Like something brushing against the edges of my awareness, examining the seams of my thoughts, checking the locks on the doors of my mind. The spiraling waveform reasserted itself on the screen, tightening, coiling. The technician monitoring frequencies gasped. "Sir, the reply signal isn't just coming from beneath level 17 anymore. I'm detecting resonance patterns through the entire facility. Walls, steel, Power lines. Everything's vibrating in harmony. Another pulse hit the floor, harder this time. The guard beside me staggered. Someone swore. "Hayes," I said softly. "Did we just feel movement?" He swallowed. "Foundation shift." I shook my head. That wasn't a shift. That was something pushing upward. No one responded, but no one argued either. The technician monitoring the cell feed flinched. "Sir, we just lost visual." "What do you mean?" Hayes snapped. "The camera. Fogged over." She zoomed in. The feed was a white blur. Frost or condensation, I couldn't tell. "Thermal imaging is offline too. Tap into the secondary camera." She tried. "Sir, the secondary shows the same thing." Hayes cursed. "Check the audio." She listened for a second, and her face went white. "There's a second voice." My skin went cold. "Drescher isn't alone?" "No," she whispered. "Something's mimicking his hum, but deeper." "Play it," Hayes said. She hesitated, then hit the speaker. The room filled with sound, not a voice, not even a hum, a vibration. Lower, older, the kind of sound that feels like a memory of fear embedded in human bones since the first life crawled out of an ocean. Then I realized it wasn't mimicking Drescher. Drescher was mimicking it. The technician at the structural console nearly jumped out of his chair. "Sir, this is bad. Pressure readings from sublevel 18 are spiking. Something is pressing against the bulkheads." "Earthquake?" a guard asked. "No," the tech said. "Earthquakes don't push upward." Hayes turned to me. "Dr. Hale, you need to leave level 17. "I'm not leaving you." "This isn't about me," he snapped. "You're the one it's reaching for. If we lose you..." The lights went out. Pitch black. No hum. No sound. Just perfect, suffocating dark. Someone shouted. Someone else stumbled into me. Hands brushed my shoulders, my arms, my face. Everyone reaching blindly for anchor points in the dark. Then, a spark, a flicker. Emergency lights blinked on, dim red strips barely illuminating the room. And Drescher's face was on every monitor, every camera, every screen, smiling. Not wide, not manic, just satisfied. "Hello again, Rowan," he whispered, his voice broadcast facility-wide. "Now you hear it too." "Turn it off," Hayes said. No one moved. The control hub was bathed in dim red light, every monitor dominated by the same image. Commander Alan Drescher, staring out from multiple angles that should not have been possible. Cameras from hallways, empty labs, even blank system consoles now showed his face. He was still seated in his cell. I knew that. Physically, he had not moved, but the system no longer cared where his body actually was. "Cut power to the feeds," Hayes snapped. A technician's fingers flew over the controls. One by one, screens flickered, lost signal, then went dark, all except one. The central monitor stayed active. Drescher remained. "Director," the technician whispered, "the primary display is disconnected from the grid. It should not be receiving anything." On the screen, Drescher's head tilted. "You keep using that phrase, Hayes," he said softly. "It should not be. It should not exist. It should not be possible. And yet, here we are." His eyes shifted as if he were scanning the room, even though no cameras were active. Then his attention locked on me. "There you are," he murmured. "Thought I lost you for a moment." My mouth went dry. "This room is off-network," I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. "You cannot see us." "Can I not?" he asked. The temperature dropped another degree. I could see my breath. "You feel it, do you not, Rowan?" Drescher continued. "The alignment, the pattern. You were chosen for that sensitivity. It is why you are here." "You do not choose my staff," Hayes cut in. "We do." Drescher smiled. "Of course you do. You signed the papers. You made the calls. You ran the screens. But you never asked why certain names felt right. A faint tapping began deep in my skull, like someone drumming fingers on the inside of my thoughts. 1, 1, 2, 1. Repeating. "Stop that," I said before I could filter the words. Drescher's smile widened. "You were already aware of it. That is good. Awareness is the first step toward integration." "Integration with what?" I demanded. He leaned in closer to the camera that was no longer transmitting. "With where I went," he said, "and with what came back." Hayes stepped between me and the screen, blocking my view. "Commander," he said, voice sharp, "cease communication. This is an order." "You keep saying that word as if it still means anything to me," Drescher said. "Orders, mission parameters, chain of command. You are clinging to the ghost of a structure that dissolved the moment I crossed the threshold." His gaze shifted like he was looking past Hayes, through him, directly into me. "Do you want to know what level 18 is, Rowan?" he asked. Hayes stiffened. "Do not answer him." My throat worked. "They told me it was nothing." "Nothing," Drescher repeated, amused. "That is almost correct. It is an absence given shape. A void they dug and then filled with their own fear. They thought if they surrounded it with concrete and steel and silence, they could pretend it was empty." His voice lowered. "But the universe does not tolerate true emptiness. Nature abhors a vacuum, as your early philosophers put it. Something always seeps in." The tapping in my skull quickened. 1, 1, 2, 1, 3. Changing, adapting. "Director," one of the technicians said, eyes wide, "we are registering structural resonance at frequencies that do not match any known mechanical vibration. It is like the entire facility is being tuned." "Tuned to what?" I whispered. "Not what," Drescher said quietly. "Who? You keep making that mistake." Hayes had heard enough. He strode to the emergency control station and slammed his hand down on a recessed switch under a sealed cover. The overhead lights snapped from red to stark white. A siren remained mercifully silent, but heavy shutters began to slide down over the observation windows. "Hard isolation," Hayes said. "We sever all audio-visual inputs. No more stimulus, no more feedback loop." On the central monitor, Drescher watched the shutters descend in the reflection of his own glass. "Do you really think darkness and concrete can stop what is already inside your heads?" he asked quietly. The screen finally went black. The tapping in my skull did not stop. Hayes turned on me. "You are done for today." "I am not leaving. You are compromised. So is everyone else," I shot back. He flinched. "Not like you." "Why?" I insisted. "What makes me different?" Hayes hesitated, battling something behind his eyes. Protocol, maybe, or guilt. He lost. "You have seen the scans," he said. "Your temporal lobe activity, your pattern-seeking index. You do not just process information, you sync to it. You match external rhythms without conscious effort. Normally, that makes you a very good scientist." "Normally," I echoed. "But down here," he said, "it makes you a receiver." The floor shivered, not violently, almost eagerly. "Rowan," he said, softer now. "If you stay much longer in his presence, you will not be able to tell which thoughts are yours and which are his. We have lost people that way." My chest tightened. "Lost how?" "They stopped sleeping," he said. "Stopped eating. They sat in their quarters and stared at the walls, waiting to hear the next pattern. And when we checked Drescher's neural activity, it was perfectly synchronized with theirs." He looked away. "We had to transfer them off-site," he finished. "Transfer them where?" I asked. He did not answer. The control hub door opened suddenly. One of the guards from the corridor poked his head in, face pale. "Sir," he said, "you need to see this." Hayes sighed. "If this is another sensor glitch, it is not a glitch," the guard. Yi said. It is the freight shaft. Hayes frowned. What about it? It is moving. We followed the guard back down the corridor. The hum underfoot felt stronger now, not just in pulses, but in a steady throb, like the heartbeat of something massive buried deep in the stone. At the end of the hall, a pair of armored blast doors stood partially open. Beyond them, a wide industrial platform descended into darkness, the freight elevator that serviced level 17. And below. The platform should have been stationary. There were no scheduled transfers, no commands logged. But the rail supports vibrated faintly. The thick cables trembled as if burdened by a weight that did not register on any instrument. It started 5 minutes ago, the guard said. Ascend and descend cycles. No input from control. No cargo. I stepped closer, peering over the edge. The shaft dropped away into blackness, lit only by sparse maintenance lights. They vanished after a few levels, swallowed by depth. I swallowed. Is it going down to level 18? Hayes looked like he wanted to deny it. He did not. We do not acknowledge level 18, he said instead. The platform shuddered, then began to rise slowly, as if answering a summons. Uncommanded. Unoccupied. I felt the tapping in my head align with the movement. 1, 1, 2, 1, up, pause, down, pause. You feel it, do you not? Drescher's voice whispered inside my thoughts. Not through speakers, not through walls, directly. Rowan, you understand elevators. You have ridden many, but how often have you wondered what waits for the car when no one is inside? I staggered back from the edge. Hear his voice? Hayes asked. I nodded, throat tight. He exhaled. Then we are out of time. Out of time for what? For pretending we can manage this from behind glass, he said. We need to see level 18. The guard gaped. Sir, protocol forbids. Protocol, Hayes snapped, was written before the subject started rearranging my facility like a toy. We can either keep guessing, or we can go look at the thing it is trying to wake up. He turned to me. You are coming, he said. Why me? I whispered. Because whatever is down there is already talking to you, he said. And like it or not, Rowan, you are the only one it seems to respect enough to warn. I stared at the rising platform. It reached our level and came to a smooth stop, doors yawning open onto an empty steel surface. No operator, no cargo. Only a faint frost settled along the edges, like breath in cold air. Drescher's whisper brushed the inside of my skull again, almost affectionate. Come and see, he murmured. I stepped onto the platform, and the doors began to close. The platform shuddered as the doors sealed, cutting us off from level 17 with a final, echoing click. Suddenly the hum was all there was. No chatter, no monitors, no reassuring noise of human activity, just the deep, steady vibration of the freight car and whatever it was descending toward. Hayes stood opposite me, one hand lightly resting on the rail, knuckles white. The guard, Reyes, according to his tag, kept his rifle angled down but ready, jaw clenched so tightly I could see the muscle twitch. There were no floor buttons, no control panel, just a single key slot and an old-fashioned analog gauge above the door, its needle sliding past marked levels. 15, 16, 17. We did not stop. The needle moved into unmarked territory. 17.5 and kept going. My stomach turned. I thought you said level 18 was the bottom. Hayes' eyes stayed on the gauge. That is what the schematics say. Schematics written by the same people who told me level 18 didn't exist, I said. He did not respond. The air grew colder as we descended. Not the crisp, filtered chill of climate control, but a damp, subterranean cold, the kind that seeped into joints and teeth. I saw my breath plume in front of me, and Reyes cursed under it in Spanish, words about saints and graves. The tapping in my skull changed, no longer random. It matched the movement of the car, Down. Pause. Down. Pause. Rowan, Drescher's voice brushed softly along the inside of my thoughts. Do you know what the worst lie they told you was? I squeezed my eyes shut. Do not answer him, Hayes said quietly. I ignored both of them. The worst lie, Drescher continued, was not about me. It was about direction. The car slowed. The gauge needle trembled at a point completely unlabeled, just an empty stretch of metal that might as well have read, "Here be monsters." The platform eased to a stop. For a moment, there was no sound at all. Then something clicked outside the doors. Not mechanical, organic. Guns up, Hayes said. Reyes raised his rifle. I pressed back against the elevator wall, pulse pounding in my throat. The doors opened. At first I thought there was nothing. No corridor, no chamber. Just darkness, thick, full, substantial. It did not look like an absence of light. It looked like an active presence that refused to allow light to exist within it. My eyes adjusted slowly. Shapes began to emerge. We stood at the lip of a vast, circular shaft. A second one, deeper than the freight tunnel above. A metal catwalk extended out from the elevator, forming a narrow walkway that curved along the interior wall. Dim, amber floor lights traced the path in both directions, revealing that the platform encircled a massive, open void. There was no railing on the edge closest to the center, as if no one expected anyone to get close enough to need one. What is this? I whispered. Hayes stepped out cautiously. His breath clouded in, front of him. The drilling cavity, he said. At least, that is what they called it at first. At first? He nodded at the darkness yawning beneath us. They were expanding the underground complex. They bored straight down, deeper than they should have. The initial reports talk about anomalies in the rock strata, unstable density, unregistered mass pockets. Then the instruments began failing. And they kept drilling? I asked, incredulous. Of course they did, he said. Curiosity, funding, ambition. They hit something that did not match any geological model. And instead of stopping, they decided they had discovered a new kind of resource. He looked at me. Or a new kind of containment. Reyes moved to the edge and leaned forward slightly, aiming his rifle toward the center of the shaft. I cannot see the bottom, he murmured. No sound returning, no echo. He was right. There was no echo. I cleared my throat and forced out a word. Hello. The sound left my mouth normally. It did not come back. No reflection, no reverb. It was like speaking into a mouth that swallowed sound. My skin crawled. This is wrong. That is what the first team wrote, Hayes said, right before they stopped writing anything at all. The hum was stronger here, rising through the metal of the catwalk like a heartbeat transmitted through bone. It took me a moment to realize it was no longer a generalized vibration. It had structure, a pattern. Drescher again, replying. No, aligning. Somewhere far below, something answered with a slower, deeper rhythm. A call and response, like two voices warming up for a duet. My heart hammered. They connected him to this, I said. Hayes nodded once. Indirectly, they brought his body back from the crash. He spent months in an isolation ward topside, unresponsive but alive. Then, during a seismic event in this shaft, he abruptly woke up. Fully oriented, fully aware, and speaking coordinates that did not exist on any map. Coordinates to what? I asked. He gestured downward. Here, Reyes swore under his breath. So they brought him down. They did more than that, Hayes said. They built level 17 above this cavity as a cage inside a larger cage. They believed whatever he had brought back with him wanted proximity to the anomaly. They thought they could study the interaction. And now he is calling to it, I said. Hayes's shoulders slumped. Yes. The air thickened. Not metaphorically. The molecules themselves seemed to slow, as if we were moving through a denser medium. My limbs felt heavier. Breathing required effort, as if the atmosphere had been replaced with something slightly more viscous than air. Reyes shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, are you feeling this? The air is pushing back." I stepped closer to the edge, heart pounding. The darkness below was not empty. It was textured, faint, currents and eddies visible only on the edge of perception, not moving upward, spinning, slowly, deliberately. "Do not get too close," Hayes warned. "We lost a drone that way. Its tethers went slack. No drop, no impact, just gone." The tapping in my skull synchronized with the slow rotation below. Around, around, pause. Around, around, pause. Images began pressing against the inside of my mind. Not visual, not exactly. More like impressions, half-remembered sensations from dreams I was certain I had never had. A sky without stars. A landscape that refused to hold still when you looked at it. A sound like a choir breathing in complete unison. "Rowan," Drescher's whisper again. But his tone had changed. Less playful, more reverent. "It sees you." I staggered back from the edge. "It?" I rasped. "What is it?" Hayes grabbed my arm to steady me. "Focus. What are you experiencing?" "Images," I said. "Not mine. Places that do not exist. Or do not exist here." Reyes stepped toward us, eyes wide. "Sir, we need to go back up. Whatever this is, we cannot contain it. It is already in his head. Now it is in Dr. Hale's head too. Level 17 is not far enough away." Hayes hesitated. He looked at the shaft. At me. At the empty elevator behind us. Then he took a slow breath. "If we go back up," he said, "we go blind. Whatever is happening will continue, and all we will see are the symptoms. Up there, he is the signal. Down here." He stared into the depths. "This is the source." The floor vibrated under our feet. Stronger now. Reyes lifted his rifle. "Something is coming up, sir." Hayes shook his head. "No, that is not upward motion." I frowned. "Then what is it?" "The cavity," he said hoarsely. "It is expanding." I watched in numb horror as the darkness seemed to creep higher along the shaft walls, swallowing the faint amber lights one by one. The catwalk trembled. Metal groaned in the distance. "It is eating space," I whispered. Hayes nodded once, very slowly. "And if we do not stop it," he said, "it will not stop with this shaft." Something moved below. Not a shape. An absence of shape. A region of deeper blackness that detached itself from the rest and began to rise, slow as certainty. "Rowan!" Drescher's voice breathed inside my mind, close now, almost at my ear. "You asked what I saw out there." The approaching void pulsed. "When I was out there," he continued, "I met something that did not know what a boundary was, until it found one." The rising darkness shivered. "And now," he whispered, "it wants to learn how to cross." The rising darkness was not a shape. It was a subtraction, a wound in the world itself, climbing the shaft like spilled ink, defying gravity. The amber lights along the wall vanished as it passed them, not flickering out, not shattering, simply ceasing to be, as though their existence had been edited out of reality. Reyes lifted his rifle, hands shaking. "Sir, permission to fire." Hayes hesitated, then nodded once. "Do it." Reyes squeezed the trigger. The rifle cracked, muzzle flash briefly illuminating the shaft. I watched the bullet travel. It left the barrel, crossed the narrow gap between catwalk and void, and dissolved. No impact, no ricochet, no sound. It entered the darkness and became nothing. Reyes stared. "That is not possible." "You keep saying that," I whispered, echoing Drescher's earlier words. "And it keeps disagreeing." The void kept rising. The hum in my skull intensified, expanding into a chord. Not music, something deeper. It vibrated at frequencies that made my teeth ache and my eyes water. My thoughts slowed, dragging through syrup. "Rowan," Drescher whispered inside my head. "You have to understand. It is not hostile. It is indifferent. That is worse." I gritted my teeth. "Get out of my head. You invited me," he said. "When you listened, when you matched." Images flooded my mind again. Not flashes, layers. A planet like ours, but older. Its crust split by impossibly straight fissures. A black ocean that did not reflect starlight because there were no stars to reflect. Structures built from absence, not matter. Gaps arranged in precise lattices. Something moving between them without moving at all. I staggered, clutching the rail. Hayes grabbed my arm. "What do you see?" "Places," I said, panting. "Or coordinates. Not physical, conceptual. It is mapping." "Mapping what?" "Boundaries," I said. "Edges. Edges it wants to cross." Reyes stepped back from the edge, eyes wide. "Sir, if that thing reaches this level..." "It will not," Hayes said. But his voice lacked conviction. "How do you know?" I demanded. He looked at me, then at the rising void, then at the elevator behind us. "I do not," he admitted, "which is why we built contingencies." He pulled a small device from his pocket, a rectangular metal fob with a recessed switch and an old-fashioned key. "This complex," he said, "was constructed with demolition charges embedded in the lower strata. If containment fails, we collapse the shaft. And everything in it," Reyes muttered. "Including us," I said. Hayes nodded once. "If necessary." The void rose another few meters. It was close enough now that I could see its edges were not smooth. They writhed, fractal and unstable, like the event horizon of a black hole translated into three-dimensional space. My thoughts flickered. Drescher's voice threaded through them, calm and almost sympathetic. "They think they can crush it with rock," he murmured. "They do not understand the difference between a container and a doorway." "What is it?" I whispered inwardly, not sure if I was thinking or speaking. "What did you bring back?" He did not answer directly. Instead, another impression flowed into my mind. Not a memory, a perspective. I was no longer standing on the catwalk. I was drifting in orbit, the shuttle beneath me, Earth a pale curve below. Stars surrounded everything, but they did not look the way they should. They bulged and bent around an invisible center, light warped by a presence that did not belong in local space. "It was a boundary," Drescher said, "thin and fragile. An interface between your universe and another structure. My ship brushed against it. That was all. A contact." "And it followed you," I said hoarsely. "No," he whispered. "It noticed you." The vision snapped away. I was back on the catwalk, knees weak, heart pounding, air burning in my lungs. Below, the void reached the level of our feet. It did not touch the catwalk. It flowed under it, climbing the opposite wall, leaving the narrow strip of metal like an island in an expanding sea. Reyes stumbled back, rifle shaking. "Sir, we have to go. Now." Hayes grabbed my shoulder. "Agreed. Back to the elevator. We trigger the collapse, seal the shaft, and pray it is enough." We turned. The elevator was gone. Not physically. The doors, the frame, the entire assembly was still there. But beyond the threshold where the interior should have been, there was only darkness. Not like the shaft. Worse. This darkness did not look like an absence of light. It looked like the absence of distance. I realized, with a cold, hollow certainty, that stepping through those doors would not put us back on level 17. It would put us somewhere else entirely. "Sir," Reyes whispered, "it has taken the elevator." Hayes stared, face draining of color. "No, it is still there. This is interference, spatial distortion." "Try walking into it," Reyes said. See if distortion feels any better when you do not come back." The hum intensified. I pressed my palms to my ears. It did nothing. The sound was not external. It was inside my head. Not just my head. The facility, the walls, the metal, the stone. A pattern was being imposed on everything. A new geometry. "Rowan," Drescher whispered. "You see it. You feel how wrong the distances are now. The catwalk is longer than it was a minute ago, is it not?" I looked down the curve of the platform. The far side vanished into fog I did not remember being there. The amber lights along the path seemed to stretch farther apart with every heartbeat. Hayes swore quietly. "Spatial drift." He looked at me. "Can you hear him now?" he asked. "Yes." "Can you make him stop?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You still think this is his doing alone?" Hayes flinched. The void on the opposite wall pulsed. A ripple passed through it, a subtle wave traveling along its surface. It felt like a tension, not from Drescher, from something older, something that had spent eternity without boundaries, suddenly discovering what a war was, and becoming fascinated. "We are out of options," Reyes said, voice climbing in pitch. "Blow the charges. End this." Hayes looked at the device in his hand. His thumb hovered over the switch. Then he pressed the key into its slot and twisted. A red indicator light blinked to life. "Arming sequence," he said softly. "Once I confirm, the lower strata, levels 18 and below, will collapse. The shaft will seal. With luck, the cavity will be entombed." "And with no luck?" I asked. He didn't answer. A faint tone emanated from the device, counting down through a short confirmation window. 10, 9, 8. The void pulsed again. The catwalk shook. Reyes lost his balance for a second and stumbled toward the inner edge. His boot slipped on a patch of frost that had not been there a moment ago. I grabbed his arm. For an instant, I felt an impossible sensation. The world below us opening, not in depth, but in direction, pulling sideways into a dimension that did not exist. Something brushed my mind. Curious, gentle, like a hand pressed against glass. A flood of impressions surged in. Worlds without matter, only relationships. Structures formed of absence, an intelligence that did not think in individuals or objects, only in topologies. It was not attacking, it was exploring, and we were the boundary. "Wait!" I gasped. "Stop the sequence!" Hayes's thumb hovered over the confirmation. "Have you lost your mind?" he hissed. "We do not have time for second thoughts." "If you collapse the shaft," I said, words tumbling over each other, "you will not crush it. You will give it what it wants." He frowned. "What are you talking about?" "It is learning edges," I said. "Boundaries, inside versus outside, surface versus depth. A collapse is just another boundary condition, another pattern, another lesson." Reyes stared. "You are saying blowing it up will teach it faster?" "Yes," I whispered. "You will give it a template for catastrophic failure. It will not die. It will learn how to break other containers the same way." The countdown tone continued. 7, 6, 5. "We cannot leave it like this," Hayes said. "The facility will not hold." "I know," I said. "That is why you have to sever the interface." "Between what and what?" "Between it and us," I said. "Between it and Drescher. Between it and any mind that can understand what it is seeing. If there is no cognition to map, it has nothing to learn from." Hayes stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time. "Sever the interface," he repeated. "You mean kill Drescher?" The void pulsed. The tapping in my skull became a steady pressure. "No," I said quietly. They both turned to look at me. "Not just him," I whispered. The realization landed with the weight of inevitability. "If you want to cut it off," I said, "you have to remove every live receiver it has keyed into. That means Drescher." I looked at Hayes, at the personnel upstairs, then at the darkness below, and at me. The countdown tone ticked on. 4, 3, 2. Drescher's whisper brushed my thoughts one last time. See? You understand now. Boundaries are choices. Hayes' face twisted. I am not killing you. You already did, I said softly. Remember? Training accident, closed casket, official story. He flinched as if struck. Reyes looked between us, horrified. Sir, what is he talking about? The device tone hit one, then held, frozen. The red light stopped blinking, suspended. The void pulsed. Time, or my perception of it, stuttered. Rowan, Drescher murmured. They will hesitate. They always do. That is why it needs you instead. I stood at the edge of the catwalk, listening to the hum of something vast and alien pressing against the thin glass of our reality. And I understood the final, terrible option it had shown me. Not collapse, not escape. A channel, a voluntary one. The void pulsed again, closer now, near enough that the catwalk itself began to bow, not from pressure, but from inconsistency, as if the metal had decided it no longer wanted to remember what solid meant. Reyes backed toward the wall, rifle trembling. Sir, whatever he's thinking, stop him. Hayes stepped between me and the growing distortion. Rowan, listen to me. You are not doing this. You are not giving yourself to that thing. I'm not giving myself to it. My voice surprised me. Calm, detached. I'm giving it a boundary. Hayes shook his head hard. You are talking about letting it anchor through you, using your mind as a limiter. You know what that means. Yes, I said. It means it can't spread. It can't learn the facility. It can't learn the people above. It can't model the world beyond. I become a closed loop, a container with one wall. Reyes stared at me like I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had. What happens to you? He whispered. What happens to me? A wave of impressions washed over me again. Stars bending around shapes that had no right to exist. Landscapes shifting when looked at. Choir-like breaths forming impossible harmonics. What happens to me is simple. I replaced Drescher, I said. Hayes went still. He understood. He always understood too quickly. No, he said. Absolutely not. He survived because he wasn't fully human anymore. You are. It'll break you. It's already inside me, I said. You felt the tapping. You saw the waveform react when I walked in. Drescher was a gateway. I'm a map. It likes maps. That isn't you talking, Hayes said. I know, I whispered. That's the point. The void surged upward, another meter, swallowing more of the shaft wall. Reyes fired again. The bullet vanished again. Hayes grabbed my shoulders. Rowan, look at me, right here. Listen to something human for a second. You don't have to do this. But his voice had already grown muffled. Reality itself seemed to be thinning. The edges of the catwalk blurred, glitching at the corners. The cold deepened. Drescher's voice brushed my mind. You see why I smiled when you arrived. My hands curled into fists. He continued, warm and soft like a teacher guiding a student to a conclusion they already feared. Integration isn't corruption. It's translation. No, I told him silently. It's containment. You say that like a prison isn't just another form of geometry, he murmured. My heart hammered. I'm not a prison, I said. I'm a breakwater. A moment of silence. Then, Drescher breathed. Now I see what you're trying to be. Hayes was shouting something at me, but his words were thin, stretched, like sound traveling through water. The void reached the catwalk. It didn't touch it, didn't consume it. It simply adjusted around it, as though rewriting the rules locally to accommodate a new structure. Rules it had learned from me, from my thoughts, from my boundaries. I stepped forward. Hayes grabbed my arm so hard I felt something tear in the muscle. Don't you dare, he hissed. I brought you here because you're brilliant, not because you're disposable. I know, I said, and I meant it. I put my hand on his. I'm not disposable. I'm necessary. His grip faltered. Rowan, Reyes shouted. The void, it's reacting. He was right. The darkness leaned toward me. No, aligned toward me, like a lens focusing on a target. Not malicious, curious, recognition. See, Drescher whispered. It likes you. I stepped closer. My mind was splitting, not in pain, but in direction. Thoughts branching into parallel tracks. I could feel the void's attention, its hunger for structures, its fascination with a mind drawing lines. Inside, outside, self, other. I gave it what it wanted. I drew a line, a boundary, a shape inside my head so clear and simple that even an infinite intelligence could understand it. You stop here. The void shivered. The catwalk trembled so violently, I dropped to one knee. Hayes shouted my name, his voice twisting like it was passing through multiple versions of space. Rowan, come back! I can't, I whispered. Not because I was trapped, but because I was holding something back. The void pulsed once more, a massive, slow heartbeat. Then it recoiled, not withdrawing, not escaping, but conforming, folding into the shape I had drawn. A conceptual container, a box, a thought, my thought. Drescher gasped inside my skull, the first sign of strain I'd ever heard from him. You're limiting it. Yes, I said. You'll collapse. Yes. He exhaled with something like sorrow. I wish I could have done that. Then he went silent. The void rippled violently. My vision dimmed. I tasted metal. Reyes shouted something. Hayes grabbed me again, pulling, trying to drag me away from the edge. But he couldn't. I wasn't standing on the catwalk anymore. I was standing inside a structure made of my own thoughts, bracing against the weight of something that had never known limits until this moment. And then, the hum stopped. The darkness froze. The shaft stilled. For one perfect moment, reality held its breath. Then the void collapsed inward, not a cave-in, not an explosion, but a silent implosion of possibility, folding into a single thin plane of blackness suspended in the air like a sheet of obsidian. A boundary. My boundary. Then it vanished. Just gone. The catwalk solidified. The temperature eased. I gasped and fell backward into Hayes' arms. Reyes exhaled shakily. What happened? Hayes held me upright, staring at the now empty shaft. He contained it, he whispered. God help him. He contained it. My vision flickered. Edges, blurred. The world sharpened and softened in alternating waves. Rowan, Hayes said urgently. Stay with me. I tried, but the tapping in my skull was gone, replaced by silence. Total silence. Then, a voice, distant, faint. Not Drescher's, my own, reflected back at me from inside a boundary only I could perceive. You drew the line, it said. Now you must hold it. Hayes' voice broke through. Rowan, don't you disappear on me. Stay right here. I blinked, and the world stabilized enough for one final thought. They won't find me in the scans, I whispered. But I'm here. Hayes swallowed. Where? Between, I murmured. Then the last of the adrenaline drained away, and my consciousness folded, inward, downward, into the quiet shape I had made. A container, a boundary, a wall. My final memory was Hayes calling for medical, Reyes muttering a prayer, and the hum of the freight platform rising again. This time, empty. And then, like a light switching off, nothing. But not absence. Structure. I'm still here, holding the line, because something vast and patient is listening for the moment I stop. And when I do, it will finish what Drescher started. But not today, not while I remain the box.